I was recently speaking with a professional non-executive director regarding the tragic events at the Dreamworld theme park in Queensland, Australia, where 4 people died on the Thunder River Rapids ride. They were convinced that the Ardent Leisure Board, owner and operator of the theme park, had to have known about the issues that were identified in light of the coroner's report, of which there was a long list. And admittedly, some of the findings appear to be really obvious, like the lack of risk assessments or the poor integration of the safety team into operations, or the board mandating that only reactive maintenance would be approved. No preventative maintenance was to be conducted without board approval. But unfortunately, things are never that simple in the complex systems that we work in. But their comment got me thinking, why is it that the actions that lead to failure look so obvious to others in hindsight? And more importantly, why do we see the findings or contributing factors that led to a particular significant event as unique or different to that which might be happening in our own organization, leaving us exposed to not seeing red flags? And that's what we're going to dive into in this video. Why we're not seeing the red flags and how we can change that. I'm Samantha McGolrick, and welcome to our little corner of the internet, where I help purpose-driven board members drive systemic change and make a positive impact on the health, happiness, and resilience of society. If your board wants to ensure that members are open to learning from significant events that happen in other organizations, so as to not miss red flags in their own, we need to revisit our paradigms, mental models, and mindsets. And importantly, know which ones we can no longer rely on, because together, these 3 phenomena can become an insurmountable and impenetrable barrier to change. Following serious events like that at Dreamworld or Pike River Mine in Greymouth, New Zealand, the BP tailings dam burst in Bento Rodrigues, Brazil, or systemic failures of respect and dignity and loss of security and personal safety, which is what you're seeing in the breadth of sexual misconduct claims under the Me Too movement, or claims of serious bullying and harassment in the workplace, there is a strong desire for leaders to learn what happened, but this is often coupled with an underlying need to find a particular quirk or practice which existed in that organization, which makes it different from our own, and therefore enables a quick and often false conclusion that will confirm our preconceptions that what happened there couldn't happen here. And this isn't just for non-financial risks like safety, health, and well-being. You could look at serious financial incidents like questionable accounting practices conducted by Enron, or the millions of fraudulent savings and checking accounts that were opened by Wells Fargo employees on behalf of their clients without their consent, or the charging of clients who were deceased at AMP Capital, or Westpac Bank's failure to prevent the breach of anti-money laundering laws. The reality is that those issues that come to light through coroner reports, royal commissions, or Senate inquiries are often not dissimilar to what's happening in many other organizations. Indeed, those were the words of the chief executive of AMP Capital after his company was exposed to having systemic failures of sexual harassment. He said, "The culture at AMP is not significantly different from any other large corporation." Now, whether you choose to agree with his statement or not, our mental models, paradigms, and mindsets play a significant role in whether we choose to learn from those organizations that have experienced failure, or whether we choose to find that quirk or difference that makes our organization unique or exempt. The risk, of course, of not learning from these events is that we don't see similar archetypes or patterns of behavior in our system that exist in our organization. And therefore, we misread the red flags, or we're simply ignorant to how we might be contributing to something similar. An extra layer to these 3 phenomena, paradigms, mental models, and mindsets, that prevents us from learning from scenarios or serious events like Dreamworld, where leadership is dredged through the mud, is that we might have to admit that there are similarities between our leadership or our organization to those who have failed before us. And that is uncomfortable to sit with. That is to associate ourselves or our leadership with failure, particularly when people have lost their lives, but also amongst a society, media, and regulators who are either seeking or being told to find someone accountable. I had a conversation with my uncle a few weeks ago when the media reported that poor handling of Victoria's hotel quarantine arrangements for COVID-19 cases resulted in the death of 760 people. He was quite adamant, as was the media, that someone had to be held accountable, and he was convinced that the person must be the person at the top, the Victorian Premier, of course. And maybe this would be your line of thinking as well. But I'd ask you to consider this. Our need to find someone accountable puts up many barriers to us actually learning, because seeking accountability doesn't make people safe to speak up so that we can actually understand the more complex issues and patterns of behavior. And searching for accountability also makes it difficult, without getting your head chopped off, to propose that there may not be someone to blame or a root cause. We may just need to approach the situation differently and much more from a learning perspective that can help us address the system itself and not necessarily the actors or people in the system. Simply put, we want to understand why things are happening, not who is to blame. So it's not about getting rid of the Premier or the Chief Medical Officer for that matter. That's not going to change the result or prove that it would have been any different had there been someone else in charge. It's really just a means to appease ourselves, society, and prosecutors. Our need to find someone accountable would also make it difficult for another Premier to look at that situation and admit that they would have made similar decisions had they had the same information, the same climate, the same relationships, the same routine behaviors and norms or culture. And instead, we'll go on in secret, if we do anything at all, to try and understand where our organization might have similar issues. And that is the most inefficient way for us to learn from failure. But this happens far too often. Heads roll, leaders depart, board members step down, and we're told this new leadership is going to be the answer to the previous problems. But it's a band-aid solution if we're not addressing the system itself. Our world is complex and everything is interconnected. What you do here will affect something else over here. And this makes societal challenges and organizational challenges complex. The moment you hear someone say, all we need to do is fill in the blank and everything will be fine. Or the problem is we need more sales, staff, revenue, whatever it is, let your ears perk up. Think about systems and that nothing is ever that simple. In fact, there's a rule of thumb in systems thinking that says there are no simple solutions. Real-life systems are big, messy, complicated things with problems to match. So genuine solutions require careful thought for their effort on the whole system. My conversations with board members continue to highlight the board's ongoing interest in how to influence culture. Or perhaps more specifically, their frustration of not being able to influence culture. But here's the thing. I have found that frustration is because we don't have enough appreciation or understanding of systems thinking. But systems thinking is the ticket to systemic or cultural change in complex systems. And please don't think that complex systems don't apply to you or your organization, because it's not that your company is complex in terms of its organizational structure. Large multinationals, small to medium-sized companies all work in complex systems that require a different level of thinking, systems thinking. In general, a systems thinking perspective requires 5 C's: curiosity, clarity, compassion, choice, and courage. It's the willingness to see a situation more fully, to think compassionately instead of seeking accountability, and to recognize that everything is connected to everything else. And to acknowledge that there are often multiple interventions to a problem, and to champion interventions that may not be popular. Systems thinking is a paradigm shift for many people. We all, to some degree, understand that things are connected to other things, but systems thinking is going to help you avoid trying to find that quirk or difference that makes your organization unique to those experiencing failure and therefore help you to see the red flags and to be proactive and to avoid all the inefficiencies that fixing a systemic problem with a Band-Aid solution ultimately costs you in the end. If you can nail systems thinking in your boardroom, it's an absolute value add to your organization and to your bottom line. And not just from the prevention of adverse outcomes, but the creation and innovation that systems thinking brings to the surface. Systems thinking in our boardrooms often involves moving from observing events or data to identifying patterns of behavior over time, to surfacing the underlying structures that drive those events and patterns of behavior. By understanding and changing structures that are not serving us well, including our mental models, paradigms, and mindsets, we can expand the choices available to us and create more satisfying long-term solutions to chronic or systemic problems. Simply put, we can make a bigger impact. As always, I hope this has helped you in your quest to know what to ask and when to act. Be brave and stay true to your commitment to lead from the heart, and I am confident you will reap the rewards. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you click that subscribe button to help my content rise to the top so that others can enjoy it as well.